Thank you very much. Can the House be in order? Honorable delegates, before we proceed, I would like to remind delegates of the rules relating to the virtual and hybrid meetings and sittings, in particular, sub-rules 21, 22, and 23 of Rule 103, which provide as follows. The hybrid sitting constitutes a sitting of the National Council of Provinces. Delegates in the hybrid sitting enjoy the same powers and privileges that apply in a sitting of the National Council of Provinces. For purposes of decorum, all delegates who are logged on to the virtual platform shall be considered present. Delegates must switch on their videos when or if they want to speak. Delegates should ensure that the microphones and the electronic devices are muted and must remain muted unless they are permitted to speak. All delegates in the chamber must connect to the virtual platform as well as insert their cards to register on the chamber system. Delegates who are physically in the chamber must use the floor microphones. All delegates may participate in the discussions through the chat room. In addition, I would like to remind delegates that the interpretation facility is active. Permanent delegates, special delegates, SALGA representatives, and members of the executive on the virtual platform are requested to ensure that the interpretation facility on their electronic devices is properly activated to facilitate access to the services. Permanent delegates, special delegates, SALGA reps, and members of the EXCO in the chamber should use the interpretation instruments on their desks to access the interpretation facilities. Honorable delegates, before we proceed, let me take this opportunity to welcome the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Minister Ronald Lamula, the Deputy Minister of Justice, the Deputy Minister. Is there another Deputy Minister of Correctional Services, the Chief, and Honorable JJ? Let me welcome you, MECs, permanent delegates, and all special delegates to the House. Honorable delegates, I have been informed that there will be no notices of motion or motions without notice. We will now proceed to the first and second orders, and that is the policy debate on budget vote 22, correctional services, appropriation bill B3 2023, National Assembly, and policy debate on budget vote 25, justice and constitutional development, appropriation bill B3 2023, the National Assembly, is a section 77. I will now call on the Honorable Lamula, Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, to open the debate. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you very much, the chairperson of the NCOP, the Deputy Minister of Correctional Services, Nkosi Patekile Olomisa, the Deputy Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mr. John Jeffrey, honorable members, the National Commissioner for Correctional Services, and the Director General of the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, the Inspecting Judge for Correctional Services, ladies and gentlemen. On the 11th of February 1990, honorable members, former President Mandela declared here in the city of Cape Town that negotiations on dismantling apartheid must address the need for democratic, non-racial, and a unitary South Africa. Restructuring our political and economic system is necessary to address the inequalities of apartheid and ensure a thorough democratic society and build one nation. This was the basis on which our country was founded through the Constitution, to constitute a unitary state. Our Constitution has made significant strides since the days of apartheid It now provides a provincial framework granting each province its legislature and executive powers, the creation of the National Council of Provinces as outlined in section 42(4) of the Constitution. 42(4) of the Constitution guarantees the consideration of provincial interests in the national sphere of government. The NCOP comprises a single delegation from each one of the 9 provinces, as honorable members are seated here. Quite evidently, from the DA's bill in the Western Cape Provincial Legislature, the Democratic Alliance finds the concept of separate development irresistible. This bill is nothing more than euphemism for apartheid. On the face of it, this bill deeply offends the Constitution. It's a yearn of the past to again balkanize South Africa into separate developments. The Constitution will not allow such kind of a separate development. South Africa is one country with one constitution. I start with the Department of Correctional Services with regards to the budget vote. We tabled before this August House a budget of the Department of Correctional Services vote 22, amounting to 26.2 billion rands. A budget which firmly believes we enable us to constitute and to continue transforming the department and contribute towards creating a safer South Africa. House Chairperson, we are through our work in the Department of Correctional Services, transforming government in our quest of creating an entrepreneurial state. Good work across all provinces by inmates, probationers, and parolees, which was in the past largely ignored, has been brought to the fore and revitalized. And through the implementation of the self-sufficiency strategic framework, our inmates are now at work in many of our workshops, farms, and some of the facilities used for skilling the inmates. Across provinces, work geared towards reforming the offending character of inmates and providing them with the necessary skills that will enable them to live a life free of crime is visible. In line with our approach of implementing practical steps to reduce the repeat offending, crack down on crime, and create a safer South Africa. Honorable Chairperson and esteemed members, as you might be aware, inmates are producing their own food through the self-sufficiency framework and saving government millions of rands. And this is visible in many of our facilities that honorable members here can visit, see it, and touch this work. Over the last 3 financial years, through the self-sufficiency framework, the Department of Correctional Services saved in total of 372 million rands. We will continue to save more money as our officials and inmates are hard at work to improve our performance in the current 2023-24 financial year. Inmates also go beyond producing their own food. They implement various community empowerment projects in many parts of the country. To mention just a few, in Limpopo, Hamuliche, Polokwane municipality, a victim of gender-based violence, Ms. Nembahe, who was living with her 4 children in dire conditions in a makeshift shack, which posed a great risk to the family, had her dignity restored when parolees and inmates built her a 5-bedroom house. The house was handed over to the Nembahe family in July 2022. There are many of such community projects that inmates embark on across the country. Strategic stakeholders provides building material for the construction of some of these materials, and inmates' labor is used, and the various workshops that we have. It is evidently clear that ex-offenders, when given a chance, can contribute positively in society. However, Honorable Chairperson and esteemed members, we have observed worrying behavior still in our society of stigmatizing ex-offenders. Ex-offenders are often unfairly discriminated against, stigmatized, and denied job opportunities even in areas where they are more suitable candidates. This regrettable results in their life chances and survival outside correctional centers significantly reduced. As leaders from various parts of the country, we appeal to your continued support and partnership in creating awareness amongst members of the community, employers, and financiers not to overlook inmates. Rather, they must utilize their skill and allow them to earn an honest living. We always say corrections is a societal responsibility. We must join hands to assist those who wrong society to find their ways back to the right path, to contribute socially in a positive way and economically where it's practically possible. The Department of Correctional Services officials have throughout the years showed that they are among the deeply committed public servants in the country, even though they work in dangerous environment, putting their lives at risk by looking after the dangerous and lowly in society. Without any acknowledgement from the public, they have demonstrated their loyalty to the brown uniform and to the country. It is through their dedication and hard work that the department continues to incarcerate inmates securely and inhumanly, in line with the United Nations minimum standards for the treatment of prisoners, popularly known as the Nelson Mandela rules. Following the embarrassing escape from lawful custody by the notorious inmate Thabo Bester, I want to assure this House and South Africans at large that we do not have porous correctional centers synonymous with escapes. In the last financial year, out of an inmate population of 157,056, a total number of 27 inmates only escaped, which represent 0.017% of the total population. We do acknowledge that one escape from lawful custody is one too many, and we continue to work towards strengthening our security adherence and standard operating procedures. House Chairperson, the performance of the Department of Correctional Services under the current administration has significantly improved. Our progress is evident by the fact that performance of the department has improved by 19% since the 2020-2021 financial year. We have progressed from 70 in the 2020-20 financial year to 80% in the 2021-22 financial year, to 89% in the 2022-23 financial year. The steady improvement can be seen, is visible, and can be touched. The improved performance is further best substantiated by the unqualified audit opinions the department registered in the past financial years. The 2022-23 financial year saw a further reduction in findings, giving clear indication that DCS is much closer to obtaining a clean audit. We will ensure that this is sustained during our term of office as governance structures and internal controls have been improving, which is progressive development for a capable state. We will be recruiting 3,096 young people across the country through the learnership program to ensure that youth innovation, energy, and talents finds expression in the Department of Correctional Services. We will also recruit skills, and those that some of them have some postgraduate qualifications to close the gap in our skills programs that we need in the facilities. With regards to the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, honorable members, for the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, we are tabling a budget of 23.3 billion rands. We are pleased to report that the performance of the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development has significantly improved since 2019. Like the Department of Correctional Services, myself, when Deputy Minister John Jeffrey and I were appointed in 2019, the department performance at a worrying 51%, but that has since significantly changed. The department is now performing at 80%, which is a significant jump from the 51% of 2019. This is a testament of our resolve to implement the turnaround plan and build a department which late President Mandela speaks about. This is a department which has policies and programs which can be measured by the extent to which they help improve the lives of our people, especially the most vulnerable and poor sections of our society, and how they access the justice services. And we are not sitting in glory, basking, and also not acknowledging that there are challenges. The department still has challenges of long queues across the country, particularly in the master's offices and the maintenance offices. And we are working very hard in terms of the modernization program in the department and the digitization program to resolve these challenges so that queues can be a thing of the past. We can report to this August House that work continues to be done to ensure that service delivery is improved and access to justice is enhanced. It is common cause that a number of South African citizens were found guilty with criminal offenses for violating COVID-19 regulations under the Disaster Management Act of 2002. However, the government is proposing an amendment that could offer a relief to those who were charged with lesser crimes or certain offenses related to the Disaster Management Act. We are therefore putting a bill which is currently in the process in the National Assembly that will help with the expungement of the criminal record related to the offenses of the Disaster Management Act. We also want to emphasize that having a criminal record should not be a deterrent to employers employing South Africans who qualify for certain jobs unless it is related to certain jobs and they've been entered into the National Sexual Offences Register. We hope that these amendments will help those who have been charged with minor crimes to move forward with their lives. With regards to the rationalization of courts, honorable members, the Committee on the Rationalization of the High Courts under the chairpersonship of former Chief Justice Moseneke has now completed the first phase of determining the areas over which the main and local seats of every division of the High Court must exercise jurisdiction. I will be receiving the final report in this regard. I'm aware that the people of Makhanda in the Eastern Cape have raised concerns during the consultation phase regarding the preliminary recommendations made by the committee about the possible moving of the main seat from Makhanda to Bisho. I have been advised that those who raised their concerns in Makhanda were afforded a hearing by the committee prior to the finalization of the phase of the report. And we have also been made aware that there is a belief in Makhanda that we intend to close the court in Makhanda and move it to Bisho. This is not the case. The intention, and that is the recommendation of the report, is to move the main seat into Bisho, but the court will remain as a second court still operating in the area of Makhanda. So the court will still operate, but these are issues that we'll continue to engage with relevant stakeholders in Makhanda, which we intend to continue the discussion with them to clear the concerns that the communities have raised. The challenges of water supply in some of our courts across the country, in particular in KwaZulu-Natal, we are closely working with the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure to ensure that there is uninterrupted water supply to all our courts and justice service points. A total of 47 courts have been identified for installation of water tanks thus far. Installing a water tank has been completed in 31 courts, while 16 are in progress. And the same is being implemented in the Eastern Cape and in Mpumalanga to resolve these challenges of water supply, and also courts in the Northern Cape. We're also putting in place a system to resolve or mitigate the challenges of load shedding in our courts through solar system and also through generators. And a total of 120 courts across the country have since been installed with generators so that the wheels of justice can continue to roll, even during difficult times of load shedding. Refurbishments and new court infrastructure to expand access to justice. We are in the process of building new courts that will be started in Mkushu and Forsman areas in Mpumalanga. We are working with DPW to do so. To ensure that our courts are safe and secure place for all court users, an amount of 10 million rand has been allocated towards the procurement of some of the X-ray scanners across the country to protect the courts. The same is being done in the Northern Cape with regards to refurbishment and building of new courts. Same with KwaZulu-Natal. We continue to do so also in the Eastern Cape. There's a number of projects that have been registered responding to the challenges of court infrastructure. In KwaZulu-Natal, there is currently one virtual court per each district in the KZN province, plus 16 in the eThekwini district. Work is in progress to equip an additional 12 courts with the virtual technology. 5 courts in the Eastern Cape province will be provided with solar power supply systems, while 5 others will be provided with generators. In the province of Mpumalanga, the department is in the process of procuring backup generators for courts in Sabi, Ochis, Piet Retief, Akonuk, Witbank, Secunda, Bushbuck Ridge, Amsterdam, Leidenburg, and Caroline. The department will continue to spend in dealing with these issues of load shedding in the various courts of our country because it has affected the smooth operations of our courts and also access to justice. And this has led to challenges of the court's role being affected and leading to huge backlogs in our court. We continue to work together with various stakeholders to ensure that the wheels of justice continue to function, even during these difficult times, and to ensure that the courts and the people of our country have access to the courts. House Chairperson, we know that more work lies ahead. We are committed to redouble our efforts to reach our desired destination and ensure that South Africans from all walks of life have access to justice system that is fairer and more equitable. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, also that you actually addressed the concern of Honorable Nana so aptly. We are continuing with the debate. Honorable Sheikh, you will continue.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chairperson. Greetings to your good self. Greetings to the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Mr. Ronald Lamola. Greetings to the Deputy Minister Jeffries and the Deputy Minister Nkosi Holomisa. Members of the Executive Council that are on the platform, honorable members of this August House, as well as members on the platform. The Inspecting Judge for Correctional Services, fellow South Africans. As we commemorate Youth Month, we remember the longest serving president of the African National Congress and the founding member of the militant ANC Youth League, Oliver Reginald Tambo, a man who was always passionate about the empowerment of the youth. He insisted that it is the youth that inherits the future of a country. He is fondly remembered by his caution that a nation that does not value its youth does not deserve its future. In the same breath, we remember the selflessness, courage, and resilience of the youth of 1976. Central to their fight was the restoration of human dignity and justice. We pay tribute to their endless heroism. Chairperson, the Department of Correctional Services strategic priorities for the 2023-24 financial year are providing adequate security and security equipment at correctional services, improving facilities, including the provision of 1,000 additional bed spaces over the medium-term expenditure framework, offering effective rehabilitation programs, which includes implementing the self-sufficiency and sustainability framework, successful reintegration of offenders into society through increasing effective victim participation in parole decisions. Furthermore, over the MTEF, the department aims to keep the percentage of escapees at or below 0.031%, the percentage of injuries at less than 4.6%, and increase the number of victims participating in dialogues and other restorative justice programs. Chairperson, with the foundations on the Freedom Charter, the policy position of the ANC on prisons has been consistent. In articulating its vision for the country, the ANC is ready to govern states that a prison service for the country must play its part, not simply in restraining convicts, but in rehabilitating them. The ANC asserted that adequate resources should be made available for the humane accommodation, education, training, and job placement of convicts. The ANC warned that the failure to do so would lead to expenditure on an ever-widening number of new jails. The ANC remains committed against any inhumane and cruel punishment. Budget Vote 22 contributes to a just, peaceful, and safer South Africa, through the effective and humane detention of offenders and remand detainees. It contributes to the rehabilitation and social reintegration of offenders back into the community. The core mandate of the DCS is to correct offending behavior and rehabilitate inmates. This vote is in line with the call of the Freedom Charter and contributes to the rehabilitation and social reintegration of offenders back into the community. The DCS effectively contributes to a capable, ethical, and developmental state, to social cohesion and safe communities as envisaged by the National Development Plan. The objectives of the rehabilitation process, as summarized in the white paper on corrections, are to focus on correcting offending behavior, enhancing human development, and promoting social responsibility and positive social values amongst offenders. Equipping inmates with appropriate and relevant skills and training through the rehabilitation program is important. After inmates have served their time and upon reintegration into society, they are able to utilize the skills they've acquired and contribute meaningfully to the economy, and as the Minister has also pointed out to this House. This plays a pivotal role in the reduction of recidivism in this country. We appreciate that the department will implement rehabilitation programs that addresses the underlying causes of offending behavior, including those contributing to gender-based violence. This also aligns to the SONA 2023 priority. Honorable Chair, corruption within the correctional service facilities and protection of whistleblowers is a matter of concern. The Department of Correctional Services has an anti-corruption strategy in place, which also includes protection of whistleblowers amongst both officials and offenders. There are also security plans in place to ensure that whistleblowers are transferred to centers where they will be safe. In addition, they have a call center line where members of the public report incidents of corruption. Another matter of concern is with regard to escapes from prisons. The department indicated that there has been a decrease in escapes in the past 3 years and is implementing strategies to reduce escapes and tracing those who have escaped. Figures indicate that more than 80% have been brought back into custody. The department indicates that in terms of protocol, immediately when an escape occurs, they inform victims and families of the offender, and they issue a media alert. A report is also sent to SAPS as it is a crime, and the department then works with law enforcement agencies. In addition, with regard to the Thabo Bester matter, the department will provide the committee with a full report. Honorable Chair, the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development is critical in ensuring that justice is dispensed accordingly to all people, that everybody gets what is right, just, and fair. The department and the National Prosecuting Authority, Legal Aid South Africa, the Special Investigating Unit, the South African Human Rights Commission, and the Public Protector South Africa received their budget allocations under the Justice and Constitutional Development budget vote. Our courts are critical for enforcing and defending the rights of people and dispensing justice. They have played and continue to play a pivotal role in protecting the rights of women. The backbone of the fight against gender-based violence are the Sexual Offences Court and the Tutuzela Care Centers, which were introduced to focus on the speedy adjudication of cases. While this is the case, courts alone cannot alleviate, let alone eliminate, the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide. The concerted effort of all South Africans, including government, private sector, faith-based organizations, traditional leaders, and the community at large is needed in this fight. Chairperson, the ANC is committed to fighting crime and corruption and implementing the recommendations of the State Capture Commission. We welcome the efforts made by the Department of Justice and the entire JCPS cluster in the fight against fraud and corruption. According to the 2023 estimates of national expenditure, the projected performance and expenditure for Vote 25 for the 2023-24 financial year and over the medium term is shaped by a focus on, amongst others, implementing the recommendations of the State Capture Commission and implementing the recommendations of the Financial Action Task Force. It was reported that 1.3 billion is provided to the NPA over the next 3 years to support the implementation of the State Capture Commission and the Financial Action Task Force recommendations. These funds will be used to increase capacity in the National Prosecution Service and Investigating Director through the appointment of 26 and 94 personnel respectively, procuring specialist prosecution services for complex matters, especially financial crimes, commissioning contracted forensic auditors and accountants to deal with high priority asset forfeiture matters, establishing a digital forensic data center, providing close protection services and integrated security services and financing increased operational costs for witness protection. Furthermore, 100 million is provided to the SIU for implementing the recommendations of the Financial Action Task Force. The NPA coordinates activities to address FATF concerns and has entered into an MOU with the SIU to ensure that these matters receive priority. The task force coordinates the work of law enforcement agencies on state capture cases, and they are working effectively together to pool resources and identify cases to prioritize matters for enrollment. In respect of grey listing, the NPA works together with National Treasury, who assists with the coordination, and this is where progress is monitored. Law enforcement agencies developed an action plan in terms of the FATF, which determines how they will approach money laundering investigations and prosecutions. Since the Pogdatara legislation has been passed, they will also embark on joint training and work closely with financial authorities to identify risks for investigations and prosecution. Honourable Chair, the ANC is committed to the fight against gender-based violence. Reprioritized funds have been made available to reduce gender-based violence and femicide, to strengthen the capacity at the Tutuzela care centres. 27.5 million over the medium term is reprioritized in the National Prosecuting Authority program to appoint 15 additional personnel, which include site coordinators, victim assistant officers, and state advocates. This reprioritization is from the National Prosecuting Service sub-program compensation of employees' budget. In addition, the number of Tutuzela care centres is increased to 68 by 2025-26 at an estimated cost of 15 million in the NPA program. This will increase the footprint of these care centres to provide optimal pretrial services to victims of domestic violence. Furthermore, the NPA is working with the private sector to increase the number of centres and to increase the awareness of the services offered by these centres to those who are in need. In addressing the implementation of the GBVF legislation, the department indicated that they are working hard to address systemic challenges and humanizing service delivery. They have developed a safety plan for survivors of domestic violence, and they have an online portal for submission of reports of domestic violence. The department is in the process of appointing more intermediaries to assist in non-criminal proceedings. Further, they are establishing more sexual offense courts and developing Pillar 3 of the Femicide Watch for continuous monitoring to develop appropriate interventions. The department is also fast-tracking the vetting process for the register of sexual offenders. Further, in terms of legislation, they are working on the finalization of the hate crimes bill, reviewing the Criminal Procedure Act, and working on the bill towards the decriminalization of sex work. The department is working with communities and stakeholders to increase awareness and understanding of gender-based violence legislation. Amongst the strategic priorities of the department for 2023-24 is the implementation of the National Action Plan to combat racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance in order to advance constitutionalism, human rights, and the rule of law. In this regard, additional funding of 1.5 million is provided to the State Legal Service Program. A further priority of the department is the review of justice-related colonial and apartheid-era legislation with the aim of aligning this legislation with the Constitution of the Republic. This was raised as a concern by the committee, and the department has assured the committee that several pieces of apartheid legislation were currently under review, and they are intending to repeal many of these pieces of legislation as soon as possible. On the legislative side, the department will be bringing forth a number of bills, including the Decriminalization of Sex Work Bill, known as the Criminal Law, Sexual Offences and Related Matters Amendment Bill, which aims to decriminalize sex work. This piece of legislation is intended to provide greater protection to women. The National Prosecuting Authority Amendment Bill, which will aim to establish the Investigating Directorate as a permanent unit within the National Prosecuting Authority. Honourable Chair, the committee recommendations with regard to the Justice and Constitutional Development Budget vote are as follows: that the department should ensure that it prioritizes the upgrading of courts and works hand in hand with the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure to resolve any challenges and ensure that courts are fully functional and operational. Work towards increasing the number of Tutuzela care centres across all provinces to provide the necessary services to victims of gender-based violence. The expansion of the footprint of these services, as well as good marketing, will go a long way in assisting victims of gender-based violence. Continue to educate the public on GBVF and ensure that all stakeholders are capable of implementing the GBV goals effectively to improve access to justice for all victims and survivors. Ensure that it rolls out generators and solar panels to all court buildings and that it addresses the challenges of load shedding with the DPWI in all provinces so that court services are not interrupted and to prevent further backlogs. Focus on reducing the backlogs at the minister's office, at the master's office, and focus on rolling out the online services to all provinces as quickly and as efficiently as possible. The modernization and the digitization of all services should be prioritized to address backlogs. The NPA and the SIU should continue to prioritize high-profile state capture cases and continue with its important work in addressing money laundering and terrorism. The implementation of the POC-DETARA legislation should be prioritized. The department, NPA, and SIU should focus its attention on the protection of whistleblowers and work collaboratively with other stakeholders to strengthen such protection. Honorable Chair, the ANC supports Budget Vote 22 Correctional Services and 25 Justice and Constitutional Development. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sheikh. We will continue with the debate and we will now call on the Honorable F.J. Badenhorst to continue with the debate.
Honorable Chair, fellow South Africans, there's the inconvenient truth that the ANC of 2023 does not want to hear. That is, that for society to be free, majority rule itself is not enough. It is the first principle of democracy, but for society to be truly free, a country must also have a deep love for liberty and an abiding respect for the rule of law. All our individual freedoms are based on the foundation of the rule of law, which guarantees that no matter the size of the majority in Parliament, no party and no individual is above the law. Every individual counts. It is this, the rule of law, which the Department of Justice is meant to protect. Its core function is that the rule of law is upheld and administered in a manner that is fair and effective. And yet, over the years, we've seen perhaps too many incidents where this department has failed dismally at this important task. For this to happen, justice must be seen to be done. Yet, we are still waiting for the prosecution of those implicated in state capture and other high-profile corruption cases. We are still waiting for the President's promise following the Zondo Commission report to ensure that through legislation, the investigative directorate of the NPA will become an established and permanent body. We are waiting for the proper capacitation and support for the NPA in terms of both human and financial resources to deal effectively with those cases, as well as the backlog in cases related especially to gender-based violence and violence against children. And in the process, the public is losing faith every day with our criminal justice system. Where is the reform and the investment in this institution that we all know is needed to recover it from the damage done by the ANC during the Zuma years? Where is the protection for those who blow the whistle against individuals guilty of such corruption when the department itself knows that the current legislative framework is not adequate for protecting those whistleblowers? If we are serious about having a real democracy, which is not only built on the principle of one man, one vote, but is also built on the principle of individual liberty and the rule of law, the rule of law must be applied equally to everyone and must be seen to be applied. And this government must do everything within its powers to enable our criminal justice system to be the first line of defense for a robust criminal justice system. Furthermore, Chairperson, we are faced with other serious challenges within the day-to-day functioning of this department and our courtrooms. In this case, the Department of Justice has, like so many other state departments, been led down by the Department of Public Works and other bodies. Courtrooms are falling apart, in many instances to such an extent that it has a direct effect on the administration of justice, and in too many instances, the effects of load shedding, which is another ANC failure, is bringing the administration of justice to a complete standstill for hours and days at a time. We have learned of instances where court officials had their use of their private phones to ensure that the work gets done, had to use their actual private phones to ensure the work gets done because their landlines were off for months. Staplers, paper, basic stationery have to be bought by staff because the procurement processes just takes too long. And in many instances, the offices are simply not conducive for a productive work environment. On this point, we must thank and compliment the Deputy Minister for always being willing to assist when we take up such issues, even for those issues that are technically the responsibility of Public Works. The same, however, unfortunately, cannot be said for the Minister. The members of the DA on the Select Committee were not shocked when we learned recently that during a portfolio committee meeting in the other house, where both the Minister of Justice and the Minister of Public Works were invited, the Minister of Justice simply ignored the invitation as if the question of court buildings doesn't concern him. We, however, on this side, are used to this minister not attending. In fact, in the past 4 years, since the start of this parliament in 2019, we cannot recall a single time that this minister has bothered to appear before us. And I can't actually wait for him to reply by saying that this is a lie. He did appear, actually, he's going to say once or twice in the last 4 years. Minister, the failure of Public Works to do their job in ensuring that our courts can do their job is your business. And if you are not having a serious discussion with your counterpart in that portfolio within cabinet and outside, then you are seriously failing in your duty to safeguard the rule of law in this country. The third concern that I want to mention is the long overdue modernization and digitization of court processes that was discussed to some extent in our briefing in the Select Committee. We are still waiting for the integrated justice system. Service at the master's offices went from bad to worse after their systems were hacked during lockdown, and basic technologies such as recording systems at the courts are all issues affecting the administration of justice. This department should have no faith in CETA tasked with providing your computer systems and security. Yet we do not hear that the department is more vocal in holding them to account. Investing in reliable technology is not only a promise that the department has been postponing for the longest of times, but it's also now becoming vital in ensuring an effective criminal justice system and preventing court records and court files from getting lost, an everyday occurrence in almost all our courts. It is indicative of the department's inability to move quickly on anything administrative, where it takes one step forward and 3 steps back. Sounds a bit like most other departments in the ANC government. Chairperson, whether these issues affect the administration of our criminal courts to hold murderers and rapists to account, or affects the conditions under which mothers and children need to approach the maintenance courts, or even the fact that grieving families have to face endless queues at the master's office to finally receive funds desperately needed to put food on the table. The failure of this department to perform as it should has far-reaching consequences. It is time that this minister steps up, shows up, and takes control. If we are serious about the rule of law and the very fiber of our democracy, no one can honestly say that they have found the current performance of this minister acceptable. Your objection to the Western Cape Provincial Powers Bill, declared unconstitutional by yourself before even tested this morning, Minister, is indicative of your usual bluster. Minister, consult the same constitution you so liberally quote. South African citizens have rights entrenched in that constitution. And seeing as this ANC-controlled government is failing to deliver on almost all services contained in those rights, you will have very little choice at the end of the day when citizens demand that those rights are respected and take them from the Constitution. They don't need your permission. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Badenos. We will now call on the Deputy Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Honorable John Jeffries.
Okay, sorry. Thanks very much, Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP. Minister Ronald Lamola, Deputy Minister Nkosi Holomisa, who's joining virtually, Chairperson and members of the Select Committee and honorable members. As we stand at the beginning of Youth Month, I want to honor the class of 1976 and also to remind the youth today of the enormous sacrifices that were made in order for us to live in a free and democratic South Africa. May we always live up to those ideals which the class of 76 would have expected from us. Deputy Chairperson, as the NCOP represents provincial interests in the national sphere of government, I will highlight our department's inputs from a provincial point of view. Our small claims courts have been one of our justice success stories. When the Small Claims Court Act commenced in 1985, the value of the monetary jurisdiction was 1,000 rand. Today, as of from the 1st of April 2019, it's now 20,000. In 1985, there were only 7 courts, and these were in Durban, Bloemfontein, Pietermaritzburg, Pretoria, Port Elizabeth, Rustenburg, and Springs. By 1994, there were 120 small claims courts in South Africa, but these were mostly in white and urban areas. Today, we have 415 small claims courts around the country. Each magisterial district now has its own small claims court. And just to give you the provincial breakdown, in the Eastern Cape, there are 79, Free State 62, Gauteng 35, KZN 57, Limpopo 39, Mpumalanga 33, Northern Cape 34, Northwest 31, and the Western Cape 45. So what makes our small claims court so successful? The most positive aspect of them is, I believe, in the fact that it levels the playing fields. If there's one court where the parties are truly equal before the law, it's the small claims court. It doesn't matter if one party to a dispute is unable to afford a lawyer, because the parties represent themselves. And if a person doesn't know how to go about the process, the clerk of the court is there to assist. Countrywide, we have 2,063 commissioners and 2,080 advisory board members. And I want to thank these commissioners and advisory board members, because without them, our small claims courts would not exist. And just to stress that their work is done on a voluntary basis, they don't get paid. Although the name of these courts refers to small, there's in fact nothing small about the matters that they hear. And the value of the claims people take to these courts have a significant impact on their lives. By way of an example, from April to December last year, a total of 22,682 cases were disposed of in the small claims court, with a value claimed of 153.6 million. And if you look at the value of claims according to provinces, it ranges from Eastern Cape 30 million, Free State 5.29, Gauteng 40.8, Limpopo 20.8, Northern Cape 2.28 million. The Soweto Small Claims Court disposed of the highest number of cases, followed by Wynberg in the Western Cape, Hillbrow in Gauteng, Ghaniesa in the Northwest, and Randburg in Gauteng. The average time spent on small claims court matters reflects the compliance of the regions, which is measured against the number of matters finalized. Out of the 22,682 cases disposed of, 84% were finalized within 120 days as per stipulation of the department's norms and standards. The Western Cape and KwaZulu-Natal regions achieved 88.4% and 88% of the compliance rate respectively. It's also vital that our small claims courts keep up with the times and with modern developments and the needs of society. Therefore, new rules for the small claims courts came into operation on the 1st of April this year. In addition, the codified instruction for clerks of the small claims courts were amended. The appointment details were for the first time included in the code. This provides the contact details of clerks of the court and commissioners in case a magisterial district needs to use a commissioner from a neighboring district. We've also developed a guide intended to highlight those changes made by the new small claims court rules, which provides for new procedures or require new forms to be used or for new responsibilities being placed on the clerks and functionaries of the small claims courts. It's of utmost importance that the provincial officers and court staff provide the necessary support to these courts, as many of them sit after normal hours. The department is undertaking a review of the small claims court system to determine how they're improving access to justice, whether greater monetary jurisdiction would assist in improving access, as well as to overhaul legislative and procedural provisions to reflect the current needs of the system. The review report is to be submitted to the Minister by March next year. Deputy Chairperson, as you're aware, Parliament passed 3 GBV Acts, which are now all in effect, and new interventions have been in place to support GBV survivors. We're prioritizing the development of the online web portal for applications for domestic violence protection orders. Recently, our senior managers attended an online meeting where the online domestic violence applications were being demonstrated. The meeting was attended by different stakeholders, such as private attorneys, prosecutors, sheriffs, members of non-governmental organizations, and departmental staff. It's envisaged that more of these presentations will most likely be held as the system is perfected. Once these protection orders can be done online, it will make an enormous difference to the lives of those who are facing domestic violence and abuse. They will be able to apply for a protection order without having to leave their homes and without having to travel. And in the Judicial Matters Amendment Bill currently before the National Assembly, which the Minister referred to, there's also a provision which will enable people to make applications, effectively enable people to make applications without having to make affidavits. We'll leave no stone unturned to ensure that all provinces will be ready to roll out the online portal sites. This week is also Child Protection Week, and as many would know, last year we raised the minimum age of criminal capacity from 10 to 12 years. In order to ensure that child justice proceedings against children in conflict with the law is prioritized and finalized without unreasonable delay, the department has set a quarterly target of 92% of the child justice preliminary inquiries finalized within 90 days after the first appearance. Last year, the target was 90% and 94% was in fact achieved. Honorable members, American abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison once said, and I quote, "Enslave the liberty of one human being and the liberties of the world are in peril." These words are still relevant today as we fight the crime of trafficking in persons, and our anti-trafficking in persons initiatives are indeed bearing fruit. South Africa is investigating, we're prosecuting, and our courts are not hesitating to impose heavy sentences for trafficking cases. We often hear that South Africa is a source, transit, and destination country for trafficking, and I want to share with you some of the findings in this regard. According to the US annual TIP report, last year's one, with regard to South Africa being a country of destination, 16 countries reported last year to have nationals either exploited in South Africa or have rescued victims of trafficking en route to South Africa. In most cases, victims were lured with false promises of employment and or for sexual or labor exploitation. With regard to South Africa being a country of origin, only 2 countries, both in our SADC region, reported to have rescued South African nationals who were exploited in their country, and that is Angola and Namibia. And with regard to South Africa as a country of transit, only 1 country reported to have had a national rescued that was in transit in South Africa, and that was a Cambodian victim of trafficking who escaped a fishing vessel in South Africa. Human trafficking is a transnational crime which is closely linked to other crimes. Therefore, to strengthen our anti-trafficking in persons efforts, we're in the process of revising the national policy framework against trafficking in persons in terms of Section 42C of the Act. Once we've cabinet approval, the revised policy framework will be tabled in Parliament. And this policy framework will ensure that all government departments and other stakeholders from civil society are collectively guided in the implementation of anti-trafficking responses. Just before I conclude, to the Honourable Badenhorst, with your deep love of liberty and democracy, I hope you showed that and wonder what you did in the 1980s and 70s. But just to say that, well, what did you do in the 80s? What did you do in the 80s? But anyway,
Order, you may sit down. Order.
Just to say that in terms of the meeting you spoke about, the minister did give apologies. He didn't just ignore it. I mean, that's really unfair. The minister was in Vienna leading a South African delegation to the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime. Thank you. Well, no, sorry, just in
Thank you very
conclusion.
much.
Okay, no, I've concluded. Okay, thank you.
You still have time. We have few seconds. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister. Honorable members, in this house, if you say something and someone respond to you, it doesn't mean the two of you are fighting. This is not a boxing ring, and we will not making it boxing ring. Honorable Ndongeni, you will be the next one, and then the House Chair will take over. Thank you. Ngwenya. Yes, Honorable Dlamini, you are raising on.
Yes, we would like to welcome Honorable Ndongeni to the Revolutionary Economic Freedom.
Order. Can we please have order in this revolutionary house?
Chairperson of the session, members of the executive, members of the legislature, compatriots, comrades and friends. The preamble of the Constitution clearly articulates that the adoption is the division of the past and establish a society based on the democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights. As we celebrate the 26th anniversary of the final Constitution and Bill of Rights, it is important to remind ourselves that the struggle for liberation was for the restoration of the human dignity. It was for justice, freedom, and equality. The African National Congress 1943 conference endorsed the Bill of Rights. From the moment it became official policy. Informing the ANC vision for the new South Africa, the drafters of the Constitution did not draft from a position of ignorance. They were guided by the African Claims documents on 1943, a document which weathered the storm of the colonialism and apartheid and still finds expression in the final Constitution. Unlike in the present day constitutional democracy, courts during apartheid did not have the power of judicial review by which they could determine the legality of acts of parliament. Instead, courts were confined to interpreting legislation. The Bill of Rights would be meaningless if our courts could not enforce it. One of the landmark cases decided by the Constitutional Court is that of S. Visas Baloyi. In this case, the court held that the state had constitutional duty to provide effective remedies against domestic violence. Pinning down the judgment, Justice Sachs indicates that read with Section 7.2 of the Constitution, which obliged the state to protect, respect, promote, and fulfill the rights in the Bill of Rights. Section 12.1 of the Constitution obliged the state to protect everyone's rights to be free from private or domestic violence, the right to bodily and psychological integrity, the right to dignity, the right not to be tortured in any way, and the right not to be treated or punished in a cruel, inhumanity, or derogatory way of oblige the state to deal with the domestic violence. Chairperson, one of the Department of Justice primary aims to ensure an access to justice system that promotes constitutional value and to provide transparency, responsive and accountability justice services. Access to justice is a constitutional imperative. It is a fundamental right that unlocks access to all the other rights enriched in our Constitution. Given due regards to the triple challenge of poverty, inequality, and unemployment, this right has the power to transform our society into a just and equitable one by improving social and economic conditions. One transformative Constitution forms the bedrock of our quest to improve the quality of life for all in South Africa. The National Development Plan states that safety should be measured by the extent which the most vulnerable in society feel are safe from crime and the condition that breed it. Safety refers principally to the state of the area and is determined based in the real and perceived risk of victimization. And safety, therefore, refers to areas characterized by significant prevalence of violence and crime. While there has been immense progress in the emancipation of women in South Africa through legislative and other means, since the advent of democracy, women remain disproportionately represented among the country's poorest. Women are still in the lower ranks of the economic ladder. The gender divided is wide. This makes the ground fertile for patriarchy and the subjugation of women to thrive. Economic empowerment is a critical factor which contributes to achieving gender equality, unleashing the entrepreneurial potential of women, which drive growth through innovation. Education, training, and job creation are some of the most effective ways to ensure lasting empowerment. Capitalization and patriarchy are twins, which are breeding ground to gender-based violence. Chairperson, the backbone of the fight against GBV are the sexual offense courts and Tutuzela care centers, which are catered for in this budget, were introduced to focus on the speedy adjudication of cases involving crimes and sexual offenses in specializing courts, which are equipped to deal with the unique yet heinous crime. In community across South Africa, Tutuzela Care Center, other comfort medical care, access to legal system, and counseling for survivors of sexual violence. The center are a partnership between donor and government departments under the leadership of the National Prosecuting Sexual Offenses and Community Affairs Unit. Tutuzela Center are a criminal tool in government integrated strategy to combat sexual violence. The center linked police stations with clinics, hospitals, and re-establish sexual offenses courts. The Tutuzela most important role is to support victims. The philosophy is respect, control, restoring dignity, and ensuring justice for children and women who are victims of sexual violence. The responsibility of ensuring that those responsible for committing gender-based crimes are brought to account rests on the entire criminal justice system. Courts are the final arbiters in matter involving gender-based violence. They have the power to protect abused women and children and effectively punish the offenders. And it is so doing send a clear message to perpetrators that such conduct will not be condoned. Access to courts is therefore paramount. While strides have been made to curb gender-based violence and violence in general, women crime statistics are still alarming high. Courts alone cannot alleviate, let alone eliminating the scourge. The concerted effort of all South African government, private sectors, faith-based organizations, traditional leaders, and the community at large is needed in the fight. Chairperson, as the sixth administration near the end, as we reflect on the work done, we will remember that President Ramaphosa expressed the country's commitment to addressing the scourge of GBVF and announced the emergency response plan to address GBVF, which includes strengthening the application legislative framework. As the legislative arm of the state, we assist with the duty to create laws for this effect. Parliament consider and pass what is commonly effected to us, the 3 bills of gender-based violence, making good for his commitment. The president assessed to law that strength fight against gender-based violence in January last year. In January last year, 3 pieces of legislative are Criminal and Related Matters Act, Domestic Violence Amendment Act, and the Criminal Law Amendment. We welcome the new directive in terms of the Domestic Violence Amendment Act 2021, which commenced on 4th April 2023. The directive imposes stricter duties on the offense NCOP principal, office managers, supervisors, and clerks of the court when dealing with cases of the domestic violence. In an official does not comply with the new directive, discipline action will take place against them. We note that the NPA reports that it is exceeded in target for the eviction of sexual offenses. And in other positive development, the number of TCCs increased from 55 to 62. The NPA is working with the private sector to set up new TCCs further. Much work is being done on the DNA backlog project. Despite the many challenges and appears to be paying dividend, this is welcome. Making South Africa a better and safe place requires effort from all of us. Together we can. Honorable Pardon Host. Angazi ukuthi wawenze ntoni wena. Kodwa ngoku indlela othetha ngayo ingathi inkulu into owusenzele yona. Azange sibone yayinkulu abantu bakuthi babenyamalala singabazi babaqetywa yintoni na. So ndicela kungasenzi kakhulu. Senze njena. The ANC supports the budget. Enkosi Chairperson.
Thank you, honorable member. Honorable members, I would like now to recognize Honorable M. Dlamini, EFF.
Chairperson, the Economic Freedom Fighters turn 10 years this year. This year, we celebrate the 10th anniversary of a revolutionary social mass organization that was founded by revolutionary activists from all parts of South Africa for 10 years. It has been 10 years of being the voice of sanity and superior logic. And it's been 10 years of unbroken struggle for economic freedom. Unfortunately, Minister, it has also been 10 years since a domestic worker was violently raped by an employer in Mkondo municipality, and the case has been on the court roll for the past decade. The minister speaks of Pitritif, but we would like to say that we are no longer identify with the name Pitritif, who are rightfully called Mkondo local municipality. Chairperson, the Economic Freedom Fighters reject the proposed budget on correctional services and justice and constitutional development. We reject the budget of a department which is responsible for shocking conditions in our prisons. The very conception of correctional service in this country is at the coalface of justice. The prison system faces many challenges, several of which are associated with a lack of available resources to meet the increasing demand for correctional services. One of the key challenges are overcrowding and funding. There is little doubt that the most serious problem facing these responsible for South Africa's prison system is overcrowding. At present, the prison inmate population is just over 152,000, which is 40% more than available beds, spaces in these prisons. The increase of prison population is mostly attributed to higher numbers of prisoners awaiting trial and delays in the processing of cases by the judicial system. You can open a case if you want to. Our correctional facilities are simply warehouses for criminals for a specific period of time, and there's been little to no attempt to transform individuals in its care. It is into respectable, law-abiding citizens. And overcrowding simply worsens the problems which face prison administrators: gangs, violence, sexual assault, public health problems, and escape attempts. Under these conditions, gangsterism is rife and is actually encouraged by the system. Prison wardens are forced to work in a system that is corrupt to an extent that those against corruption are frowned upon. The crime rate in South Africa is increasing as as is the prison population. As such, it makes managing a prison difficult and reducing the chances of reoffending almost impossible. To make matters worse, South Africa's prisons are also understaffed, badly designed, and structurally crumbling. The department is mandated by the Constitution to offer and implement rehabilitation programs to offenders imprisoned by the court of law. Yet it falls short of its mandate to fulfill its responsibilities due to a number of reasons, including corruption, poor management, and lack of resources. When we adopted our constitutional order, we wanted to have our correctional centers as rehabilitation centers because punishment for a crime had to be corrective, not punitive. There also exists a massive backlog of parole considerations for prisoners with long sentences. Parole backlog is piling up on the minister's desk, forcing prisoners to spend years in prison beyond their minimum detention periods. Waiting for parole prisoners serving life sentences and who have been served out their minimum detention periods are facing lengthy delays for parole consideration. And for years, prisoners sentenced to life imprisonment have complained about the long delays in accessing considerations for parole. The unjustifiable delays result in many lifers spending more years in prison than is appropriate. We also reject the budget of a department that has turned to the private sector, outsourcing services of public prisons. Chairperson, for years, the EFF has asked the minister about the rationale for outsourcing the management of prisons to private entities, as was the case in the Mangaung Maximum Security Prison in Bloemfontein, from which Thabo Bester escaped. When we asked, we were fully conscious of the prison industrial complex that has turned the lives of poor Black men in particular into commodities that could be dispensed with at will to make money for capital. A life was lost in Mangaung, and his body was criminally used to let a rapist and a murderer out of jail. This was facilitated by the private entity that the minister has defended for years. Bester's escape is telling of the corrupt collusion between the Department of Correctional Service, G4S, and the South African Police Service. It is confirmed the level of deceit and incompetence of the correctional services of South Africa. We must learn lessons from more advanced countries that have privatized prisons and see how deeply corrupt and inhumane the system of private prison is. Corruption in correctional facilities fatally undermines the character of these institutions as places that should ensure that those who break the law are consequenced and rehabilitated. The outsourcing system is grossly costly. The two private prisons in South Africa, Mangaung in Bloemfontein and Kutama in Louis Trichardt in Limpopo, cost the South African taxpayer an eye-watering 1 billion a year. One is tempted to ask whether this money could not have been spent in a better way to allow people to live healthier, more constructive lives instead. Chairperson, we also reject the budget of a department which has turned access to justice into an elusive dream for millions of our people, for whom courts remain out of reach because of exuberant costs it takes for one to access justice. Legal Aid Board, which is meant to enable the poor to access justice, is poorly managed, and there has been nothing done to ensure that the board is properly staffed to guarantee quality legal representation to our people. We need justice to be accessible to our people. Minister, the NPA has not prosecuted any of the high-profile criminal cases that should be low-hanging fruit for them in this country. They have not told us that they do not possess the capacity to prosecute racist criminals such as Marcus Juster. And you also have shown us your incompetence by bungling up the so-called reparation of the Gupta family. The investigative directorate is as toothless as the NPA itself. To date, the directorate has not done any of these things that we were expecting them to do. Many high-profile criminals are walking around unbothered, and many of them, including their enablers, are walking around with blue lights as cabinet ministers in this country. The former liberation movement in office will never be a sustainable solution to South Africans' developmental problems in the foreseeable future. We reject the budget of a department which fails to provide inmates with conditions which lack human dignity. We reject the budget of a justice system that is not able to investigate and prosecute criminals without fear or favor. We reject the budget of a department which hounds the public protector like a wild animal merely because she dared to investigate the powerful. We want a human rights commission that is deeply rooted in the idea of justice, particularly for the dispossessed. We want our courts to be left independent to interpret the law without undue influence of the rich and powerful. We want the NPA to be free of corruption and prosecute without fear or favor, because that is the only way they would regain their tattered dignity. Chairperson, as our organization will be celebrating 10 years of unbroken struggle, 10 years of anti-corruption, 10 years of fighting racism, 10 years of being in the forefront of the land, 10 years of making sure that the African people are represented without fear or favor, 10 years of ensuring that Black professionals are not looked down upon. We reject this budget vote.
Thank you, honorable member. Other honorable members. The next speaker is Honorable NP Wolomisa, Deputy Minister, Justice and Correctional Service Corrections. On the platform.
Adilizindab. Adilizindab. Adilizindab.
Honorable Wolomisa.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Ronald Ozila Mula. Deputy Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, John Jeffrey. Honorable members of the National Council of Provinces, National Commissioner of the Department of Correctional Services, Samuel Tobachale, Regional Commissioners, Inspecting Judge, Justice Edwin Cameron, members of the National Council for Correctional Services, members of the Correctional Supervision and Parole Boards, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. The Department of Correctional Services is obligated to secure and to provide a secure and safe environment for both inmates and officials in the correctional centers, and making sure that the people of South Africa are and feel safe. In order to create safer communities, greater integrated planning amongst government departments and external stakeholders is essential. Despite various challenges that threaten to hamper effective service delivery, we are able to report progress on ongoing key initiatives and projects in line with our DCS Vision 2068. The 6 regions of DCS and their constituent management areas spanning the 9 provinces of our land are the coalface where we leverage the district development model to implement the National Development Plan, the National Spatial Development Framework, the Integrated Urban Development Framework, and the Medium-Term Strategic Framework by localizing and synergizing objectives, targets, and directives in relation to the 52 district and metropolitan spaces, thereby addressing the triple challenges of poverty, inequality, and unemployment in a specially targeted and responsive manner. This department works tirelessly towards empowering citizens and contributing to the development of communities while executing our core mandate. The Kokstad Management Area of KwaZulu-Natal region, in partnership with the Police and Prison Civil Rights Union and Harding Relief Projects, used offender labor to construct a 3-roomed house at KwaMazakele Unit 2, Harding, that is Shepstone Management Area, for a female police volunteer, Nombulelo Chevana, and has 6 children. After their one-room house was destroyed in a fire incident in 2021, the house was handed over to the Chevana family on 5 May 2022. Working together with my counterpart, the Deputy Minister of Basic Education, Dr. Regina Muhaule, we donated 200 pairs of shoes, socks, and personal hygiene items to learners in Makoni Beam and Silverleaf primary schools in Dunoon and Joe Slovo in the Western Cape region. This particular initiative was made possible by the generous donations of our officials through the Poverty Alleviation Fund of the Goodwood Management Area. The department has a long-term facility strategy to ensure the establishment and maintenance of facilities that are consistent with human dignity, health, safety for offenders and officials, while ensuring that all facilities are compliant with all regulations and standards. On 8 July 2022, the department launched a state-of-the-art incinerator at Helderstrom in the Overberg Management Area of the Western Cape region. The incinerator is the first of its kind in South Africa from a design and size perspective. The emissions are the lowest in all classes when compared to other incinerators in the country. The design of this incinerator also took green building best practices into consideration, and one of the byproducts of the incinerator is hot water, which will now be used for the cleaning of the abattoir and the dairy, thus further generating cost savings with respect to electricity consumption and water usage. Most importantly, the training received by offenders in the use of this state-of-the-art incinerator will give them a distinct advantage when seeking work opportunities upon their release. In the Free State Northern Cape region, we are putting together offender labor to good use to improve facilities in our centers. 3 new pharmacies will be opened during this financial year. The construction of the Goedemut Management Area Pharmacy is already complete, with 2 more planned for Uppington and Colesberg management areas. Chairperson, the department will make a concerted effort in the current financial year to use Izimbizo and other platforms to educate the public about the rights of incarcerated persons as enshrined in our constitution, and implementation of international protocols for the treatment of prisoners, such as the United Nations Minimum Standard Rules for the treatment of prisoners, also known as the Nelson Mandela Rules, and the Bangkok Rules, to which South Africa is a signatory. We are happy to report that the Eastern Cape region launched an arts and crafts gallery in the Grahamstown Correctional Center in February of this year as part of enhancing self-sufficiency and sustainability for offenders upon release to communities. The department worked together with Rhodes University, the National Arts Festival Office, and the Department of Sports, Recreation, Arts and Culture, who provided professional advice and guidance on the relevant protocols. Subsequent to the launch, the National Arts Festival Office made a commitment that the DCS Arts and Crafts Gallery will be one of the sites which will be visited during the National Arts Festival from June of 2023 going forward. During the past financial year, arts and crafts centers were opened at correctional facilities at Groenbent, Gosimamburu II, Grahamstown, and Pietermaritzburg. At least 9 more arts and crafts centers are planned to become operational across the country in the current financial year. Special word of gratitude goes to our Minister, Honorable Ronald Ozila Mula, for his exemplary guidance and leadership, as well as the officials of the department, led by the National Commissioner, Mr. Tobakale. The dedication of management and officials of the department to the task at hand is what keeps the wheels turning at correctional facilities across the country. The professional cooperation we receive from the Judicial Inspectorate for Correctional Services, the National Council of Correctional Services, and the Correctional Supervision and Parole Board is much appreciated. The challenges we face are daunting, And one of the ways available to meet them is to support this budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Member. The next speaker is Honorable G. Mikalakis.
What an exciting act to follow. Thank you, Honourable House Chairperson. Chairperson, Churchill said that a society is measured by how it treats its prisoners. On paper, our Constitution provides for conditions in prisons that are conducive to reform and rehabilitation. I believe that no person is born inherently evil, and therefore I strongly support the idea that a person should firstly receive an appropriate sanction which does not always have to be incarceration, but that when the crime is serious enough to warrant incarceration, that the individual needs to re-enter society at the end of his or her prison term, not as well-trained, hardened criminals, as is currently the case, but as respectable persons that can make a positive contribution to society. In fact, the international standard for acceptable prison conditions are called the Nelson Mandela rules. Yet Mandela's own country and his own party is not living up to these standards. Rule 4 states that the purpose of a sentence of imprisonment is similar measures that take away a person's liberty are primarily to protect society against crime and to reduce reoffences. Those purposes can be achieved only if the period of imprisonment is used to ensure, as far as possible, the reintegration of such persons into society upon release so they can lead a law-abiding and self-supporting life. That is the reason we no longer have a Department of Prisons, but a Department of Correctional Services. But it is of no use if it only exists in theory and not in practice. The real situation on the ground is something quite different. 38 correctional services or correctional centers across the country are currently overcrowded by 300%. In most of these cases, inmates have to share single mattresses or sleep on the floor. There is no way that these conditions can be conducive to creating productive members of society. Delays in investigations following arrests and delays in criminal trials further contribute to the overcrowding. Additional to this, unaffordable bail for less serious crimes makes the detaining of some inmates frankly unjust. I've heard of cases where a detainee could not afford a 50 Rand bail for a petty crime and ended up being incarcerated under these circumstances. This points to a clear problem in our correctional services system that is not sustainable. The department is, and it knows it is, in clear violation of many of these facilities of the Nelson Mandela rules. It's also in clear violation of our Constitution. Some of the conditions pointed out in the Cameron report on Pollsmoor in 2016 are still present, and Pollsmoor is not an isolated case. The overcrowding and poor conditions can be found all over. On my visit to correctional facilities in the Free State, I've witnessed how excellent staff try their best to make things work with the limited resources at their disposal. But buildings are falling apart, and in one instance, almost 80% of the machinery used for cooking and washing was out of order with a request submitted to the Department of Public Works years back already, to no avail. Yet I do not see the department ever raising the issue with the Department of Public Works as it should be doing and as vocally as it should be. Do you, Minister, ever confront your cabinet colleague on his department's dismal performance, which has a direct effect not only on the performance of your own department, but its ability to respect basic human rights? If so, please inform this House today so that we know which of the ministers to blame. You both sit in the same ANC cabinet. Surely communication there could not have been broken down to such an extent that you can't even fix a steam pot and a washing machine between the two of you. As chairperson in a country with crime statistics such as our own, it's easy for less liberal-minded individuals to ask the question, why do we bother in the first place? Yet the current system under the ANC turns individuals guilty of petty crimes into hardened criminals, and instead of going to prison to learn something that might contribute to society upon release, young inmates leave they're graduating in the knowledge of being destructive members of society. I fully understand that the lack of resources and the social conditions inherited have contributed to some of the problems that the department might be facing. But it is not as if the Minister of Justice's hands are tied. We are still waiting for any initiatives to reform our correctional services, to address the issue of alternative sanctions and finding innovative ways to deal with petty crimes, including the decriminalization of some of the more archaic forms of crimes. But this will not happen if we continue on the path we have been on for decades. Rehabilitation is not prioritized, neither in the budget nor in practice. Teaching inmates basic values, equipping them with skills, addressing the psychological and social factors that led to their action in the first place, and making every attempt to create an environment within which they can become respectable members of society is wholly absent in many facilities due to budgetary constraints. Yet, should this not be the first items in the budget that should receive the bulk of the funds? Should this not be the priority and the core aim of correctional services? Which leads to the question, what happens to all the money? Minister, your staff on the ground in correctional facilities do not even receive proper uniforms. I'm told in more than one province, and if you visit them, you will hear the same, that staff have to buy their own shoes because the ones that are issued don't last. They have to wait for months to receive replacement uniforms and then don't receive enough. They even have to buy stationery out of their own pockets. And it is no different with regards to uniforms and bedding of inmates. In the case of the latter, it's simply much more of a risk. My colleague in the other house reminded me of an old saying of our dear friend James Self, who knew correctional services better than anyone who occupied any of these benches. He said that prisons work where prisoners work. We need to invest in rehabilitation programs where inmates can feel that they're making a meaningful contribution to society and which equips them to be productive members of society when they leave. Despite the self-sustainability initiatives that the department has embarked on with some success, we are still a long way away from achieving this goal. Yet, House Chairperson, a closed-minded approach and a fundamental misunderstanding of what the actual purpose of this department is keeping us from meaningful reform. Add to this the thriving corruption in the department, all of which I will never have sufficient time to highlight, and it is no wonder that this department is in many cases a serious human rights violator. I am at this point not going to go into the details of the soon-to-be Netflix documentary on the Thabo Bester saga. The minister, his department, and those involved on the part of G4S have done a sterling job in embarrassing themselves. But the problem, House Chairperson, is much more serious. This department is the final and arguably one of the most important links in a proper criminal justice system, where criminals are ending up back on the streets, posing a threat to the most vulnerable members of society on your watch, Minister. You should be the link where the tide against crime is turned around. The failure to stop young promising children from becoming hardened criminals in the first place might be the job of the Department of Education and society as a whole. But the failure to reduce the number of such criminals and to prevent them from going back into society, killing more and raping more, this is your job ultimately. The buck stops with you. With so much at stake, this country and its people deserve someone who takes this job much more seriously than you, Honourable Minister. And yes, the Deputy Minister says that Honourable Badenhorst was unreasonable in saying that the Minister missed one meeting. If that was true, it would have been unreasonable. But surely the Minister does not have a standing appointment in Vienna every single week when we have our select committee. Your absence is indicative of two things. Firstly, your deep disrespect for the democratically elected representatives of all voters from all parties in this House, including the ANC members. And secondly, your fear that if you had to come and do what you send your department to come and do week after week, it would expose your gross incompetence. Honourable House Chairperson, the Democratic Alliance believes that our democracy deserves better than having an absentee for a minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable members, I would like to call Honorable S. Lomuka. I don't know whether now he's on the line because he was having a challenge of a connection. Honorable Lomuka? Not, okay. Siyakuba. Now we go to Honorable S.F. Detroit. And also I would like to invite Honorable Nyambi, the House Chairperson, to continue with the debate.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, Jonathan Sachs said that, and I'm quoting, true freedom requires the rule of law and justice and the judicial system, which the rights of some are secured by denial of rights to others, close quote. The Potchefstroom Magistrates Court in the Northwest Province, Chair, is one of the courts where justice is delayed as a result thereof denied. The Freedom Front Plus has on numerous occasions written to Mr. Lamola to stress the fact that urgent intervention is needed at the Potchefstroom and the Klerksdorp Magistrate Courts to expedite the infrastructure repairs. There are still insufficient number of courtrooms. Chair, the offices that are still in the process of being repaired still pose serious health threats to both the employees and the legal practitioners. It seems as if no urgency is being made to address these matters. South Africa has been experiencing load shedding since 2008, and since 2008, the majority of the courts across South Africa could not operate effectively since these courts were not equipped with standby generators or alternative power supply. Reliable power supply in the courtrooms are imported for various reasons, Chair, being it lighting, safety, ventilation, and most important, the recording of the court proceedings. This leads to delayed finalization of court cases, accumulation of legal bills for clients, and delays in payments of legal practitioners by their clients, and delayed justice for the victims of crime. Voorsitter, ek is bewus van regslui wat daagliks moeders en kinders in die oë moet kyk, wat maand tot maand wag vir sake om afgehandel te word, onderhoudsake wat voor die hof moet dien vir finalisering. Wanneer jy in 'n hof rondstap, moet jy in die oë kyk van moe maas wat heeldag moet sit en wag, aangesien hulle nie regshulp kan bekostig nie, en dan al tyd moet afstaan om te wag vir die onderhoudshof. Kinders wat as gevolg daarvan, as gevolg van die feit dat onderhoudssake nie afgehandel en gefinaliseer word nie, sosiale en emosionele trauma moet deurstaan. Voorsitter, is amper 16 jaar. 16 jaar, voorsitter. Vir 16 jaar word die wiele van die gereg deur hierdie gedwonge verkorte hofure weens beerdkrag gerem. Dis buite die agterstand van die hofrol wat opgebou is weens die COVID-inperking. Dit blyk dat die enigste howe wat bystand in hierdie verband verkry die Hooggeregshowe is, maar verskeie landdroshowe is agterweeg gelaat. Dis juis hier waar geregtigheid getoets moet word. Justice Ismail Mohammed, the former Chief Justice of South Africa, said, I'm quoting, "It's in the magistrates' courts that justice is tested in its most crucial, most pervasive, most voluminous, and pressurized and logically most demanding dimensions in literally thousands of cases every day. That continues to struggle for the legitimacy and the efficiency of the instrument of justice is sustainability lost or won in the magistrates' courts." Close quote. Het kan seker van 'n kriminele regering verwag word om regspleging te ondermyn, voorsitter. Dit wil voorkom of hierdie regering eerder daarop gefokus is om die regte van prisoniers op papier te beskerm in plaas daarvan om te verseker dat daar voldoende rehabilitasie plaasvind. In a recent report by the National Institute of the Crime Prevention and Reintegration of Offenders, NIRCO, it indicated that although there are no accurate statistics available, about 87% of the prisoners that leave prison commit crimes again and needs to go back. Suid-Afrikaanse tronke is sowat 40% oorvol, voorsitter, en daar staan hopeloos te veel prisoniers in die selle in vergelyking met die hoeveelheid korrektiewe personeel wat veronderstel is om hierdie mense op te pas en wet en orde te handhaaf. Hierdie oorbevolking hou vele gevare in vir beide die prisoniers as ook die personeel. Minister, Please do not be in denial about the state of the courts and the negative effect it has on the credibility of the legal system, as well as the fact that the offended and the vulnerable are the victims in this. As Brian Stevenson put it, the opposite of poverty is not wealth. The opposite of poverty is justice, close quotes. South Africa has never before experienced the high level of poverty it does at this stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Mpumalanga MEC Community Safety, Security and Liaison, Honorable Shongwe Ndimanze on the virtual platform. Honorable Shongwe.
Thank you very much, Chairperson Babe. And also let me take this opportunity and thank all the presiding officers that are working with you, Babe Nyambi, and greet the Minister Lamula, and all the deputy ministers that are here, the Chief Whip of the Majority Party, my colleagues, cabinet members from different provinces that are here, the honorable members of the NCOP, ladies and gentlemen, I want to take this opportunity and greet you all. I rise to contribute to the debate on the budget vote of correctional services, justice and constitutional development delivered by our honorable Minister Ronald Lamola. My chairperson, our constitution is a national compact that seeks to heal the divisions of the past and establish a society based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights. It is a roadmap that seeks to transform the political, economic, and social relation in South Africa. And I want to take this opportunity, my honorable chairperson and members, just to say, if you stay in a glass house, you must not throw stones, because your house might also feel the pinch of those stones. You see, I was listening this morning from Cape Town, where about 4 bodies, lifeless, that were discovered in a very exclusive area of Cape Town that are not being able to be identified, except to say what they know about now is that they are Bulgarians. And that tells you that if you stay in the glass house, you must not throw stones. Key to the Constitution is the Bill of Rights that guarantees the fundamental rights, including the freedom of speech and association, right to life, equality, human dignity, political rights, citizenship, and many others. And I want to thank you, Minister Lamola, and your colleagues for bringing to our attention as South Africans that we have a person like Bester in our midst. If you did not bring that particular matter in terms of transparency, some of us we need to look back and ask ourselves what impact the Constitution had on the lives of our ordinary people. Have we used our Constitution as an instrument to liberate our people? That is the question that we must ask ourselves. These are very important questions that we need to ask ourselves wherever we craft our budgets as different departments. Not only correctional services, but all departments, including the department that is headed by the opposition in the country. The departmental programs must be consistent with the noble ideas of our constitution and guide against violating the human rights and preserving dignity for others. It is against this backdrop that I therefore support the budget vote for the Honorable Minister Lamula and the entire ministry, because it factors in the fundamental questions that are enshrined in the question that we need to respond to. In his address, the Honorable Minister advocated for broadening access to justice, national action plan to fight racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, related intolerance, and strengthening the right against maladministration, and of course, corruption. Honorable Chairperson, on the other hand, the budget cuts and load shedding impacted severely on the service delivery and infrastructure project implementation. Load shedding has become the greatest obstacle to our country's growth and development trajectory. It might cause a delay in the implementation of the infrastructure projects, such as the use of technology in court proceedings. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused a great loss of life and much hardship to our people. The pandemic has worsened the situation of deep unemployment, negative affected livelihoods, and increased poverty. Honorable Chairperson, we have considerable challenges in our country, such as high unemployment rate, high poverty, and high inequality. We need to work together to overcome these triple challenges and not be bystanders and cheap politicking over these three matters, because it is not only the people of Mpumalanga only that are affected by these triple challenges, but the people of the entire country. We need to work together to overcome these challenges. Let us avoid the unnecessary confrontation. Let us avoid politicking for short-term party politic gains. Let us join hands to promote unity in the diversity for all. Lastly, honorable members, the Department of Justice has spearheaded and paved way for the enactment of various pieces of legislation to, among others, undo the injustice of the past. These include laws that will make it difficult for perpetrators of crime to go unpunished. We also note that through the National Prosecuting Authority, many people have been brought to book and accordingly for corruption and fraud. According to the Corruption Watch, between October 2020 and May 2023, above 9 billion has been recovered and over 350 people have been convicted successfully. And we want to take this opportunity, Minister, to thank your department and to thank your ministry and the entire people that are working together with you in making sure that we transform our country, we transform correctional services, which in the past were only meant for the Black majority of this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Shongwe. The next speaker is Honorable Hatebe, who's in the chamber. Honorable Pungan.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister, Honorable Deputy Ministers, Budget 25 serves as a critical component in our democratic and constitutional check and balance order in ensuring that our country upholds the rule of law and protects the rights of all citizens. Therefore, it is of utmost importance that we address the various challenges faced by the department. Crucial services such as legal aid remain poorly funded and inaccessible to many, which consequently lead in many instances to a denial of justice. This is unacceptable and unconstitutional, as all South Africans should be able to have access to quality legal services, particularly our most vulnerable groups, such as women, children, the elderly, the disabled, and the rural poor. Another critical challenge our country is facing is the underfunding of the National Prosecuting Authority. The NPA plays a crucial role in ensuring that perpetrators of crime are brought to justice. However, the NPA is struggling with insufficient resources. This leads to case backlogs, lengthy court proceedings, and in many instances, unsatisfactory results. We must increase the funding for the NPA to ensure that justice is delivered swiftly and efficiently. Considering this, the Department of Correctional Services has an important role to play in balancing the rights of victims through the incarceration and rehabilitation of the offenders, as reintegration into society should be the ultimate goal. It is with this in mind that the IFP notes with concern the lack of funding and the number of inspectors in prisons to conduct regular inspections. Additionally, in light of the recent events regarding the privately run correctional services facility by G4S, it is worrying that this department has taken a reduction of its overall budget. As a country, along with the rest of the world, we have learned that an inmate by the name of Thabo Bester broke out of a private facility. This does not leave one with a substantial amount of confidence in the correctional services system. We welcome the fact that the government has served a 90-day notice to cancel the contract with the private security firm that manages the facility. However, the reduction of the department's overall budget might have a ripple effect of consequences on the availability of funds to either take over the facility, we build a new premise, or sufficiently staffing it. Within the Department of Correctional Services, we still find significant challenges with overcrowding and understaffing in our prisons. This problem leads to poor conditions for inmates and additionally poses security risk. Corruption remains rife and the system needs a full audit and overhaul if we are to make inroads into reducing inmate recidivism. Furthermore, we must also ensure that our courts are representative of the diversity of our society through the transformation of our judiciary, and that there is adequate training and support for judges and magistrates. Technology must be embraced to assist with alleviating administrative burdens on both departments, as this will not only improve efficiency, but also reduce the cost of administration. In conclusion, Honorable Chairperson, by addressing these challenges, we can ensure that justice is delivered efficiently and effectively in our country. Considering the comments made, the IFP supports budget votes 22 and 25. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Atebe. The next speaker is Honorable Smith.
Thank you, Honorable House. Thank you, Honorable House Chair, Honorable Members, Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, fellow South Africans. Honorable Members, justice and the condition of prisoners have always been an important aspect for the DA. And the tendency was set by our predecessor, Helen Suzman, who fought very hard to make sure that the rights of prisoners are protected. And it is something that we must not take for granted. Honorable Sheikh, You quoted our Tambo on the importance of the youth and having a respect for the youth. And it's quite weird if we look at the statistics today of unemployment of youth and how the youth are treated by this government. And, you know, it is something that you should go and ask yourself some questions about. Are you living up to that? I think he would turn in his grave. This government is so serious about justice that people with money are out on ridiculous reasons of being terminally ill. And there's some names that come up. Jacob Zuma, Shabir Sheikh. So we play some golf out there instead of serving our time. Others disappear into thin air for months while no one notices a thing. And now that it is out in the open, everyone is claiming innocence or stupidity, as no one have answers on what happened. What money can't buy under the ANC government is shocking. Honorable Dlamini, you forgot to mention 10 years of EFF not having a democratic leadership election. I want to tell you, Honorable Minister Lamula, that you will have to start building some more facilities now, because I don't think there's enough space for all the challenged cadres after the 2024 election, who has been challenging this country. Honorable, well, I'm sweeping actually. Do you want to come and do it on my behalf? So, Honorable
Order members.
Honorable members, we are really, you know, you must be concerned if you see all the things that happens in our prisons, where cell phones are being smuggled into the prisons, where people are running businesses, illegal businesses from inside our prisons, and that is something that all South Africans want to know. What is being done about all of that? So you've got a lot of challenges still to sort out, Minister. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Smith. The next speaker is Honourable Mtetwa on the virtual platform. Yambos.
Honorable House Chair, Honorable Jomo Nyambi, Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Honorable Ronald Lamula, Deputy Minister JJ, and Inkosi Olomisa, members of the executive, members of the legislature present in our debate, Inspecting Judge for the Correctional Services and your team, National Commissioner and your team, head of the institutions receiving their allocation in the justice vote. Fellow South African, good afternoon. The African National Congress raised in support of this budget vote 25 on the correctional services. Let me start there, Chair. Secondly, the dawn of the democratic South Africa unshared in the paradigm shift, a new beginning where prison becomes a correctional centers of rehabilitation. Offenders are given a second chance, as it was mentioned before, a new hope and encouragement to adopt the lifestyle of ideally members of the society. South African criminal justice system has undergone reforms aimed at reflecting the tenets of the Constitution and undergone the legacy of our undoing the legacy of our oppressed past. It is well known, Chair, that the apartheid justice system was a repressive tool in the hands of the state, and that incarceration made likely, if any, distinction between activist criminals, children, and adults. The colonial apartheid prison system was meant to dehumanize and warehouse offenders. Since 1994, when the African National Congress take over, there has been a move to the reform the criminal justice system away from the apartheid legacy, guided by the Constitution's demand for safe, secured, human, and incarceration prison were demilitarized. The direction of this institution change has placed a great emphasis on human rights and including a more restorative vocabulary in the policy document, Chair. The mission of the Department of Correctional Service is to contribute to a just, peaceful, and safer South African through effective and human incarceration of inmate and rehabilitation and social reintegration of offenders. These are done, Chair, by enforcing the sentence of the courts in a manner prescribed by the Act, determine all imminent and safe custody while ensuring their human dignity, and promoting the social responsibility and human development of all sentenced offender and persons subjected to the community or community corrections. As the ANC chair, we have long emphasized that the correction is a societal responsibility, and that the business of the rehabilitating and the reintegrating ex-offender cannot be left solely to a government. Offenders, paroles, and probationals are human beings regardless of whether they were in conflict with the law before. This attitude is bedrock of the values and ethic of the Constitution Bill of Rights, whose roots can be traced back to the policies documents of the African National Congress. Having received a second chance through the department rehabilitation program, may ex-offender have transformed into law-binding citizens who contribute positively towards building a safe South Africa where all can live in peace and harmony. Ex-offenders have the potential to become both employers and employees. Through education and skill development program that they can require while incarcerated, may are able to come out as a changed individual, ready to reverse their history of thuggism and malevolence into inspirational success story. The mandate of the DCS is to invest in the rehabilitation and social integration program, aim at breaking the cycle of crime as outlined in the National Development Plan, towards ensuring that all people in South Africa are free, feel safe. The white paper on correctional state that no correctional system can achieve its objective if it does not have a range of healthy external relationships such as families, community, private sector, non-governmental, faith-based and community-based organization, as well as other government departments. The department bear the responsibility of ensuring that the program offered to offenders while incarcerated creates an environment that fosters self-discipline, social independence, and ongoing family support and community support. It is important, Chair, for the department to work together with the community and victims of the crime to nurture the spirit of the forgiveness and reconciliation between the offended and the offender. Restorative justice is critical, Chair. The Constitution guarantees every detained and sentenced prisoner the right to be detained under the conditions that are consistent with the human dignity, including at least the exercise and the provision of adequate accommodation, nutrition, reading materials, and medical treatment, and to communicate with and be visited by the person, spouses, or partner, next of kin, chosen religion counselors, chosen medical practitioners. Section 2 of the Correctional Services Act of 111 of 1998 states that, Chair, the purpose of the correctional services system is to contribute to maintain and protecting a just, peace, and safe societally by, one, enforcing the sentence of the courts in a manner prescribed by the Act, and determine all prisoners in a safety custody while ensuring their human dignity and promoting the social responsibility and human development of all prisoners and persons subjected to the community or community corrections. The triple challenge, Chair, of poverty, unemployment, inequality is structurally and a major contributing factor to crime. The department is the last role played in the criminal justice system, as it is responsible for the incarceration of remained, detained, and sentenced offenders. With this scourge of crime, the department is seized with that responsibility, which ultimately results in overcrowding. The ongoing challenge of overcrowding remains a major challenge, Chair. It limits the effective and the meaningful of the rehabilitation, which is the core business of the department. Some of these reasons for overcrowding are growing levels of incarceration, insufficient accommodation, aging of infrastructure, and a high population remain detaining. The cause of this overcrowding, Chair, among others, are not confined to the limits of criminal justice, but extend to the other spheres of state responsibility, such as social welfare policies, access to health and services, education, employment, among others. The increase in offender population continue to present an unavoidable challenge of overcrowding in the correctional facilities. While rehabilitation and social reintegration remains key programs in the fulfillment of department mandate, the safe and human incarceration of inmates is also very important. One of the major challenges facing the department is overcrowding. Overcrowding leads to the gang activities and decrease the correctional official supervision and control, and lower standard of living for all inmates, and discipline violation among offenders. In addition, Chair, when coming to closure, to overcrowding, gangsterism, and a shortage of specialized personnel and inadequate rehabilitation equipment, such as library facilities, impediment to the effective rehabilitation. For a rehabilitation and reintegration perspective, Chair, overcrowding has a several negative impact as it continues to undermine almost every conceivable manners the positive impact that program could have. Overcrowding can have a significant negative impact on the offender well-being and mental health because the department is unable to provide the requirement and the rehabilitated support. When the weight of the offenders numbers overwhelmingly physically and human resources correctional service delivers is constrained in many respects. Overcrowding negatively affect the official too. The 2016 JICS annual report found that overcrowding in combination with staff shortage is a primary source of stress among the correctional officials. The issue of overcrowding has been consistently raised. We urge the department chair to take the matter forward. We applaud the department in the good work it does through rehabilitation program, self-sufficient model, and socially reintegrated program, and encouraging not to relax its effort in making South Africa a better place. When coming to Chair on the Mekalakis issue, that he has pointed a finger to the minister, that the issue of crimes is because of the minister failure. I don't find that, because crime, when you look at the people that commit crime, these are our children. These are our brothers and sisters. These are our relatives. These people, they live with us. The moment you remove yourself from the main understanding of crime, you will always throw a stone in a glass house. Chairperson, the ANC support this vote 25, and I hope Mikalakis from today going forward, he will understand that crime is not only for the police, is not only for the correctional service, is for all of us to participate and ensure that we sketch this, we defeat it. If we are not working together, we are not going to achieve anything. I thank you, Minister. Honorable Nyambi.
Thank you. Thank you. Honorable President.
Thank you for recognizing me, House Chair. I just wanted to chair our rise on the point of respect in the House. The last speaker referred to Honorable Mikalakis as Mikalakis. And I think that whether you're here or on the digital platform, you should still respect the honor decorum of the House. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'll check Hansard if it was referred like that, but it's correct. We have to refer to each other appropriately for the decorum of the House as honorable members. Honor, no, it's confirmed that he did, so he has to correct that because we're honorable members. Honorable members, let me acknowledge the Deputy Minister Kekane, who's here to support the colleagues. We are welcome in the National Council of Provinces. Now I'll invite the Honorable Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Honorable Lamola.
Yeah, thank you very much for all the inputs and the majority of the House support of the budget. Honorable Baronhost, you spoke as if you have just fallen from heaven. Because if you are here in this planet, you will have seen that while we have got challenges, there is positive progress that the department is making with regards to the self-sufficiency program, with regards to access to justice, with regards to mitigating the effects of load shedding. So there is some work that can be visibly seen by someone who does not suffer from any prejudices, who wants to see positive work that is happening. And it is the work that is being done by the officials in both departments, and we really appreciate their work. The self-sufficiency program that we are refusing to see has changed the face of correctional services across the country. It is revolutionizing every correctional center in all parts of the country. Inmates are at work, they are sewing, they are learning agricultural skills, they are learning welding, they are learning various skills that will enable them to make a contribution in society. We are also making sure that with the courts, we've put a program to respond and mitigate the effects of load shedding with both the high courts and the lower courts. And we're working with the Department of Public Works to register more programs to respond to this challenge of load shedding. It is indeed incorrect that we are not supporting the work of the NPA. We have given an additional budget of 915 million rands to the NPA in this current financial year. And this additional budget will enable the NPA to recruit and grow their own timber, to get technology, and also to enable them to deal with other issues of human resource in the institution, thereby capacitating the NPA to be able to be responsive to organized crime, corruption, and the various challenges our criminal justice system is facing. It does look like the EFF has got a habit of misquoting Angela Davis. This kind of habit happened in the National Assembly through Honorable Yako, and today it is happening with Honorable Dlamini, distorting what it meant by the prisons complex. South Africa only has 2 private prisons out of 243 prisons in the country. The majority of our population in the prisons is in public hands, is run by the state. And the prisons that were privatized, that were 2, which is Mangaung Correctional Facility and the Mangaung and the one in Kutamas in Tumule, were as a pilot project. And there is infrastructure that we are going to be using in Mangaung when G4S leaves at the end of the 90-day period. Excellent infrastructure with state-of-the-art technology. It's not like the state has not received value in its investment in that Mangaung facility. There's value that we have received, and that is the infrastructure. With regards to the Legal Aid Board, we have extended Legal Aid Board to honorable members to the occupiers of farm workers, and this is now operational across the country. There could be challenges, but now from the last financial year, Legal Aid Board is now able to defend the rights of farm workers. I'm shocked that the Honorable Dlamini is not aware of this revolutionary development. We have also moved in regards to a number of challenges dealing with overcrowding, remissions, and so forth. But as Honorable Mtetwa has said, crime is a societal problem, and once there is a continuation of convictions, the challenge of overcrowding will continue. We all have to work together as a collective of society to reduce the level of crime so that we can also reduce the level of overcrowding. Mr. Honorable Detroit, with regards to Potchefstroom, there is ongoing work of reconstructing and refurbishing that court in Potchefstroom. It's a lie that there is no function. The court is functioning in building 1 and in part 2 of the 2nd floor. So there is work that is happening, and the department is continuously transporting those that may need to go to the others witnesses and for the wheels of justice to continue to flourish. So there is work that is happening. And it is also true that I do not attend the meetings of this house. I am here unless Honorable Bradenhos cannot see me. I am always been here. It's for the first time he sees me because he's a newcomer. He's the one who is a fresher in this house. I've been here for a long time, and I'm not surprised he has not seen me. But his newcomer status does not give him to declare me a persona non grata in this house. I've been attending and responding, and also the deputy minister has been attending even the meetings of the select committee. He has been perpetually available. We want to thank all members of the house for your contribution. Thank you very much, and for your support of the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Order. Honorable delegates, that concludes the debate and the business of the day. I would like the Minister, Honorable Lamula, Deputy Ministers, Honorable Jeffrey and Honorable Olomisa, permanent delegates, MEC, all special delegates, our guest, DM Kekane, and DG, and the entire delegation with the DG for availing themselves for this important sitting. The House is adjourned.